Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Engineering Student Experience Podcast. I'm Paul Nissenson from the Mechanical Engineering Department at Cal Poly Pomona. During my 13 years as a faculty member, I've answered a lot of questions from students about how my department functions behind the scenes. One area that appears to still be a mystery to most students is the role of the department chair. And that's completely understandable. When I was an undergrad student, many years ago, I didn't know much about the department chair for my major either. So I wanted to create this episode to help clarify what a department chair is and how that person impacts students. Now, before we continue, if you're not already somewhat familiar with how a university is structured or the different types of faculty at a university, you may want to check out episodes 6 and 8 before continuing on with this episode. In those two very short episodes, I give much of the background that's necessary to get the most out of this episode. Many undergrad students will spend their entire academic career without needing to interact with the department chair. When I was an undergrad, I may have talked briefly with the chair of my department a couple times, but honestly, I'm not completely sure anymore, and it clearly wasn't something that was very memorable. But it is important to know who your department chair is because you may find it necessary to interact with that person at some point, especially if you need an important form signed or run into a conflict with an instructor that can't be resolved with the instructor directly. The exact role of the department chair varies based on the size of the department and the policies at a university. But broadly speaking, the department chair is a faculty member who also is the administrative head of the department. The chair is the main representative of the department to the rest of the university and has many responsibilities. And here is just a partial list of the duties often performed by the chair. The chair advocates for resources to the dean and other university administrators, and advocates for new tenure-track faculty positions when they're needed. A chair often is responsible for building the schedule of classes for each term, and finding qualified part-time lecturers to teach enough classes to ensure students can graduate in a timely manner. The chair sits on most or all of the important department-level committees in order to know what's going on with the entire department at all times. And these committees oversee curriculum development, assessment, lab maintenance, actions involving the retention, tenure, and promotion of faculty, and the search for new tenure-track faculty members. The chair organizes general department meetings, which all tenure-track faculty members are supposed to attend, for the purpose of discussing important departmental matters and to keep faculty apprised of what's going on with the rest of the university. And in my department, we usually have a general department meeting every 3 weeks or so roughly 5 per semester. The chair often serves as mediator for disputes between students and faculty and occasionally between faculty members too. The chair is responsible for reviewing numerous forms for both students and faculty. For example, a form may be required for students to gain access to a lab to complete a project, or for a student who wants to take an extended leave of absence due to a personal hardship. Faculty who want to attend a conference often need to complete paperwork to ensure there'll be coverage for their classes when they're away. All of these types of forms usually require approval from multiple university entities, including the department chair. The chair may seek funding from private donors and from grants for upgrading facilities such as instructional labs. The chair frequently sends emails to current students about upcoming events, new classes that are added to the schedule, internship and scholarship opportunities, and whatever else the chair feels is important for students to know. Now, given this large set of administrative responsibilities, the chair is usually given a significant reduction in teaching load, and the expectations for research from that person also are lowered. The chair is usually a faculty member who already has tenure, and someone who is generally well respected by the fellow faculty members in the department. The process for selecting a chair varies by department and institution, but often the chair is selected by a majority vote of fellow faculty members in that department. The typical term of chair is 4 years, and there often are no term limits. I've known people who were chair for just 1 term, and people who were chairs for a couple decades. It's important to note that the chair is not the boss of all faculty members in the department, but rather that person is a leader whose opinion carries a lot of weight. The chair can shape the department by setting the agenda for department meetings and trying to obtain resources for the department using the connections and status afforded by their position. In order to help demystify the position of department chair, in today's episode, I have a conversation with two department chairs here at Cal Poly Pomona. Dr. Berit Givens is in her 8th year of being the chair of the Mathematics and Statistics Department, and Dr. Shokoufeh Mirzaei is in her 2nd year of being the chair of the Industrial and Manufacturing Engineering Department. During the interview, Berit and Shokoufeh discuss how they view the role of the department chair and describe the types of traits that good chairs have. They share their experiences of what being the chair is like, including discussing how chairs interact with students and how they can impact the students' academic careers. We also get into why someone would want to become a department chair in the first place. When someone applies for a faculty position at a university, they usually do so because they are really interested in teaching, research, or maybe both. Very few faculty members enter academia because they want to become the main administrative head of the department. Becoming chair requires a faculty member to give up teaching and research, at least partially, to handle the numerous necessary duties required to make the department grow and thrive. I've actually been the associate chair in my department for the past 4 years, and in this role, I assist the chair with a lot of tasks, including scheduling, and I occasionally fill in for him when he's not available. So I've got a taste of what it's like to be chair. The chair is constantly receiving urgent emails from students and faculty and administrators at all hours of the day, and the chair often has to talk with students and faculty when they are in very, very stressful situations. The chair often is required to make very important decisions, and those decisions can impact people's lives greatly. So now let's hear what it's like to be a department chair from Berit Givens and Shokoufeh Mirzaei. I hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, well, I'm sitting across the table from a couple department chairs. I have with me today Professor Berit Givens, who is the chair of the Department of Mathematics and Statistics, and Professor Shokoufeh Mirzaei, who is the chair of the Department of Industrial and Manufacturing Engineering here at Cal Poly Pomona. First of all, thank you both for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Before we get into what a department chair is and how it impacts students, I think it would be useful for our listeners to get a little bit of idea of who you are. So, what's your education background? How long have you been a faculty member? How long have you been a department chair? Anything that you think will help the listeners get a better idea of who you are.
Yeah, so my educational background is that I started out at a small private college, and I started college as an undeclared major, did not know what I wanted to major in, but then in the middle of my freshman year took a math class that was linear algebra, and I loved that class so much, and my professor wrote a message on my first exam. He wrote, "You should be a math major." And so I remember kind of thinking like, oh, can you actually do that? Is that like a real major? And then that just got me started. So I finished my bachelor's degree and was working in the tutoring industry, working with small children for a couple years. And based on that, decided I didn't want to work with small children anymore. I wanted to work with older students. And so I went back to the University of Wisconsin at Madison to get my PhD. Got my PhD and came to Cal Poly in 2003 and taught classes for many, many years. And in 2016, I became department chair. So this is my 8th year as department chair.
How about you, Shokoufeh?
My path was slightly different. I kind of knew what I want to do from high school because, I'm an immigrant, and in Iran, you have to decide whether you're going to go to engineering track, social sciences, or human sciences in first class in your high school. First grade. And so I had to make that decision early on. And usually if you were good in math, you would have gone into engineering track. So that's what I did. And a part of it is because of the national entrance exam to university, which is very competitive. So you have to know what you want to do to spend a couple of years in preparation for that test that is once a year. So eventually I made it to the university and did my bachelor's and master's degree in industrial and systems engineering in Iran, and came to the US to pursue my PhD in industrial engineering with a minor in statistics. After that, I worked as a consultant for a year as a management consultant, worked for big clients like Caterpillar and other major manufacturers in Illinois. And then I moved to California for a position of assistant professor in 2012 and been here since. So it's about 12 years that I've been a faculty for Cal Poly Pomona, but my role as a chair started about 2 years ago in the spring 2022 when we were at the end of the pandemic and transitioning to face-to-face. So I became the department chair in the midst of going from virtual learning to face-to-face learning, which has been an interesting experience.
Overall, how do you view the role of a department chair, both in your own department and in the university?
I believe being a department chair is a big service. So for those of you who don't know what service is basically providing resources and opportunity for your department. I don't see it as necessarily someone who oversees things. I see it as someone who works with other people to make things happen within the department and also outside the department. So you're a sort of middle manager. You're trying to respond to a lot of stakeholders above you in the hierarchy and also trying to provide the best opportunity for your faculty and students. You continuously are in the battle between upper management and getting as much resources as you can and opportunities for people within the department. That's how I see it. I think it's a major service responsibility.
And Berit, since you've been department chair a bit longer, do you see that role very similarly, or how do you view the role as department chair?
Yeah, I view it very similarly. I think part of what makes it hard is that there are so many different aspects to it. You're doing things within your department, you're helping students, you're helping your faculty. You're oftentimes maybe mentoring faculty or trying to kind of get groups of faculty to work together on some project. So you're kind of like a project manager in some ways. Mm-hmm. But then there's a lot of it that's outside of your department. And a lot of it is kind of representing your department to the rest of the university. So you want to make your department look good. You want to advocate for your department with the administration. You want to collaborate with administrators, work with other departments. So there's just like many, many different aspects of being a department chair.
So how does one become a department chair? And more specifically, I guess, why did you both decide that I'm going to take on this service responsibility that you didn't have to take on?
That's an interesting question. And I think it's different in different institutions how one becomes a department chair. For me personally, I never thought about becoming the department chair. When I became the department chair, it kind of like fell on my lap in a way. I was thinking maybe down the road in a couple of years from the time that I became the department chair, I would consider it, but unexpected circumstances happened. And at the moment, our department chair stepped down and there was not many other people that would like to become the department chair. It was me and another faculty. And I felt, given some of the experiences I had under the previous department chair leadership, I was eager to make some changes. And I think because I was very motivated and excited to make changes, I thought maybe it's a good opportunity for me to nominate myself as a candidate for the department chair. And it was encouragement of some other faculty as well that I should do it. But I was very hesitant because I was I was going through some personal life milestones and I wasn't sure if the amount of responsibility that I'm taking on as the department chair potentially is a good decision or not. So I had to talk to a lot of mentors that I had, and they all convinced me that it's a good decision. Luckily, I had those people in my circle, and then I nominated myself as the department chair and went through the formal process. There's a formal process where you make a presentation to the body of the faculty in the department, and then they vote among the candidates, and luckily I was able to get everyone's vote, so it was pretty much unanimous, except the other running mate. It was a very straightforward process for our department.
Why do you want to become department chair, Berit?
I think same as Shokoufeh, that there were a lot of things that I was sort of excited about, like directions that I thought the department could go in, that I could help them go that way. Also, for me, it was 2016, and that was 2 years before semester conversion. So I'd spent a lot of time on the committee that was planning the curriculum for semester conversion. I had been really deep into all of the details and the nitty-gritty about how semester conversion was going to work. And it was sort of a complex project, semester conversion, and I felt like I had a super good handle on all of those details and how all the different pieces fit together. So it seemed like a time where I could provide a service by helping the department get through this process that I felt like I knew really well. I also had a former dean who was always telling me that I was a natural leader. And I remember just kind of thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not a leader, you know? And then finally one time I just said, I'm not a leader. It's just that I sometimes see things that I think could be better and I want to make them better. And he said, well, that's what being a leader is. And I remember in that moment thinking, okay, if that's the definition of a leader, then I'll accept that, you know, like that feels right to me.
Yeah, and just for the listener, our university back in 2018 went through this gigantic change of going from a quarter system into a semester system. So that was just a gigantic effort that all three of us went through.
Yeah.
We're still trying to recover from, I think, bits and pieces. So I like to think of universities as kind of going through a one-year cycle that just keeps repeating over and over. So we have classes in the fall, then we have a winter break, and then we have more classes in the spring, and we have a summer where we might have orientation and maybe summer classes as well. If we think about this as kind of like a one-year cycle, what is like a typical one-year cycle for a department chair? When are times that things are really chaotic and hectic? When are things maybe a little more relaxed? So how would you describe 1 year as being a department chair?
Usually scheduling is one of the big part of our responsibility, and that starts way ahead of what usually people think that is going to happen. Like right now, I'm working on spring of next year schedule. So if I think about a cycle in fall, starting an academic year, we are in the beginning of the semester, and we are also trying to roll out and make sure our spring schedule, the following schedule, is kind of like set for the registration mid-fall, because that's a big task, because as soon as we start the semester, we have to be ready for the registration. So the busyness of the beginning of the year and starting the classes and getting settled, in addition to having your spring schedule finalized for student to start enrollment in a month and a half or so, it's a big task. And once the registration starts, then you get some emails from students about like, oh, this class has conflict with this, and sometimes you have to make adjustments. Sometimes faculty cannot teach anymore. So there's all those last minute fires that you have to put out during that time. But once the registration for spring kind of ends, you have a short break, I would say, because then soon you have to start you have maybe between Thanksgiving, I would say, to finals, your load, I find myself to be a little bit less busy on the scheduling and task. I mean, there's finals and all that stuff, but then because the enrollment for the spring has ended and it's not the beginning of the semester, it's a little bit slower. But then as soon as the new year starts, then you're trying to work on the schedule for the next fall, because then you have to, the students are going to enroll in the middle of the spring. And also the schedule of the spring and next fall are due around the same time. So you have to work on both semesters at the same time. So it gets very busy very quickly again. And then you always have end of the semester students. After the semester ends, you have students that they want to do grade appeals. They cannot reach out to their professors and they're not happy with the grade that they got, and they reach out to you, but you have to communicate that, the professor has to first go, and review and see their complaint before it comes to the department chair. So you're dealing with a little bit of grade appeal bits after the finals end until the new year starts and you start, working on the schedule for the next year. And then you have the summer schedule in between as well. If you offer courses in the summer, besides the scheduling, I find myself very busy with leading a lot of committee within the department to make changes. Like, for example, I'm leading 2 efforts right now to revamp our both IE and industrial engineering and manufacturing engineering curriculum. And a lot of these tasks doesn't move forward until you have presence in the committee and ensure that people come on the table and talk to each other about some of these changes. So leading these committees, it's a major part of my responsibility, making sure things happens. People get around the table, meet in these committees, and naturally you become a part of a lot of the committees. And also recruitment, like search for hiring new faculty. We're hiring 2 faculty this semester, and that's a very, difficult job to go through 70, 80 applications and then sort them out, do Zoom interviews with 15, and then see like 7 to 8 on-campus visits. So our spring has been so far very busy with all these tasks. So that kind of wraps up a whole academic year for me.
Yeah. And then I guess there's also, summer orientation for new students as well.
Yeah. So scheduling is also probably my most difficult task. The math department is really huge. And so the scheduling task, I think in the fall, we have something like 350 sections of classes. And
Gosh.
In the spring, about 275 sections. And so just trying to schedule all of those into classroom spaces that we have. At the end, you're just like searching the campus for empty classrooms, desperately trying to add new classes, and then scheduling all the faculty and working with the faculty schedules and making sure that times don't conflict. So it just ends up being a really complicated logistical problem to solve all of that. I also agree that the times when students are registering, so like registration weeks for fall and spring, I get really busy. I tend to just kind of block off a week when registration starts, and I don't even try to do anything productive that week. I just plan that I'm going to be constantly interrupted, because I used to try to do work during those weeks and think, oh, I'll write this document or I'll plan this curriculum change, and then get frustrated because I was getting interrupted with so many questions. And so it's just better if I kind of realize and accept that I'm going to be getting a lot of email questions from students walking into the office with questions. And I do have great staff who help answer a lot of those questions, but there's always questions that are not the routine that I'm asked to help with. We're also doing hiring of new faculty. The other thing that didn't get mentioned before, I think, is all of the different faculty evaluation that has to happen.
Mm.
So in the fall, we do all of the tenure and promotion and retention of tenure track faculty. And so that we have a committee that does it. But then in my department, the department chair also writes a separate report for each person. And so I'm reading all the materials that each person has presented and then writing up a little report saying how they're doing. And then in the spring, we have the temporary faculty evaluation. And my department, I think we're evaluating something like 50 faculty this term. I don't do all of those individually myself. There's a committee, but I'm kind of running that committee. So I'm trying to make sure that everybody's meeting all the deadlines and reviewing all the material, and that we're checking that the faculty submitted all the right material. It's just, again, kind of a really big logistical problem. But you also want to do a good job. You want to read people's material carefully and kind of help the faculty feel appreciated, and also give them feedback if there's helpful feedback that you can give. And then orientation also gets very busy. I find, as the chair of math, that orientation, I have to be on campus when we have math majors coming in for orientation, but I also have to be on campus when we have engineering majors coming in, or when we have business majors coming in, because all of the majors take math oftentimes in their freshman year. So I again, on days when orientation is happening, I just kind of plan that for those 3 or 4 hours that the students are registering, that I'm just going to be available to just troubleshoot registration problems.
It sounds like just an enormous amount of work.
It is. It is.
So how does a chair impact students and interact with students? So what kind of conversations do you typically have with various students throughout the year? And besides, say, scheduling, what kind of activities do you do that really impact students that they may never see and may never know about?
I would say the one that we are working on right now, which is a huge impact on our students and their readiness for the market, is the change in the curriculum. So what we are doing right now, we're looking at what the market trends are within the next 10 years, what skills our students need to know, and leading the effort for bringing those contexts and ideas into their curriculum. Another thing is industry partnership. I'm actively looking to make partnership with a lot of industry around campus to create pipeline for internship and job opportunity. So students might not never know that was their department chair who made some of these connections, but this is something they definitely benefit from.
And what kind of interactions do you have with students, sort of one-on-one, typically throughout the year?
So we have a town hall meeting in the fall, which I bring all the students and ask them for their wish list. What do you want to change within the department? How we can do things better? How we can better communicate with you, and all that. That's as a meeting with the body of the students as the department chair, but also on an individual basis. I advise change of major, veteran, a specific group of students that I meet on a one-on-one basis. But also there are grade appeals, or if they have complain about a professor, sometimes I would be the person that they would reach out to, in addition to sometimes just pure advising. As a part of my responsibility, I still have to teach. So I have connection with the students through teaching, senior project advising, and just regular advising. So I do that on top of all the other things.
How much of a reduction in your teaching load do you get by being the chair?
So out of 15 units, I get 7.5 for the department chair, and I still have 7.5, which that means I have to teach around 1 courses or 2 courses per semester.
I don't teach any courses. My department
you have a giant department.
Yeah, my department is so big that my chair assignment is, I don't remember exactly what it is in terms of units. I just know that I don't teach any courses. I don't have that much one-on-one interaction with students. I think that my work as chair is often to help my faculty do things that will help the students. So like a faculty member might come to me with an idea of, oh, I want to do this international global mathematics project, and I try to help him figure out who can he connect with and how can he get resources to make that happen. Or faculty came to me last year and said, we want to move to a free calculus textbook, and so I worked with the faculty to kind of make that happen. So I don't directly do all that many things to kind of help the students, but I try to facilitate what other faculty can do to help the students.
Yeah, I wanted to add that the bringing resources, like for example, we bring a lot of donors to our department to donate to upgrade our labs. So our students have access to the state-of-art technology. So that's something that they might necessarily know, but that's something that we have been able to do. And we brought about $500,000 to upgrade our automation lab, which students can immensely benefit and go to the job market with the skills that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, and students just show up and they just assume that it's all just here,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool robots, but there's so much work behind that, resource and equipment to come into the lab.
As we were discussing a little bit earlier, every semester you're going to have some students who get upset at their instructors for a wide variety of reasons. Maybe they don't like the way an assignment was graded or their overall grade. Maybe they felt the instructor said something that was demeaning to them. There could be 100 different reasons. When do you think it's appropriate that a student try to work with the instructor to handle whatever the conflict is? And when do you think it's appropriate to kind of bring it up to the department chair level, which is kind of an escalation?
Well, I think generally it's best if the student can first talk to the instructor. When a student contacts me, I usually will ask them right away, well, what efforts have you already made to work this out directly with the instructor? We don't want students kind of jumping steps in that hierarchy. We don't want them just like going directly over the instructor's head. Now that might be different if the instructor is doing something, really egregiously bad or illegal or something, then they should definitely come to me if there's like a discrimination complaint or something like that. But if it's more just of a disagreement, I'd always want them to start with the instructor first. And then when students come to me, I think they often think that I'm sort of like the manager. And like if they come to me and complain and I agree with them, then I can go tell the faculty member, to do things differently. But the fact is that there's a lot of things that faculty have a lot of freedom in their class. And if the faculty member thinks this is the best way to teach this topic, I can give advice, I can give feedback, but I can't necessarily say, oh, well, you shouldn't grade on attendance or you shouldn't give homework sets this long or something like that. Like those are things that I can't actually tell anybody what to do. I don't have that kind of authority. What I try to do is I try to listen to the student, then go talk to the instructor. I always keep the student anonymous when I talk to the instructor, just to kind of get both sides of whatever the situation is. And then I try to give advice to both sides. I basically try to function as a mediator. So I'm not going in as an authority figure, but I'm going in as somebody who can maybe hear both sides and kind of allow both sides to hear each other a little bit better.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing for me as well. As you're mostly there to hear both sides and give advice to either side that, to the faculty, if you did this way, would have been more fair or more consistent with other instructors, or if you had done your homework better, maybe you shouldn't have reached to this point. But also there are some times that, the complaints could actually be relevant and just doesn't end as a mediation effort, and you can go beyond that. So example was a lot of students started talking about this adjunct faculty that we hired, and we had to do a lot of investigation, and we realized that there are so many comments about her, and it turns out that a lot of them were legitimate, and we didn't want a certain type of behavior from our instructor, so we dismissed that instructor the following semester. So sometimes you have the opportunity to make decisions and change things for the better if the comments are relevant, but usually for the most part, I would say 99% of the time, you're on the mediation side and you're trying to work things out. And if it doesn't happen at your level, then students always have the chance to take their appeal to the higher level of hierarchy. So I always advise students that if you're not happy with my suggestion, you still have an option. But I don't think even there, this is going to go too far. If I feel like the complaint is not really cut it through the system, is not strongly evidenced by facts. Because you hear sometimes students come with all the allegation about their professors that he's not fair, he's not professional, or this and that. And then when you talk to them, you really understand that, well, this student didn't show up half of the semester and the professor didn't give him this grade. So it doesn't seem that he clearly indicated in his syllabus. So it depends on how much of evidence and facts the student can provide and, back up their claim. But for the most part, you're trying to provide advice, and Berit said, to both ends to improve things for better.
Yeah, I've also had, occasionally I've had situations, I've had situations where a student has come to me about another student where I then ended up referring it to a higher office to handle it because it was a really serious situation. I try to make sure that students are aware of their rights, like they have a right to a grade appeal, and I'll point them to the process, and I'll even pull up, there's a web page that has an advice for students on the grade appeal, and I'll kind of go through that advice with them as well. And yeah, occasionally you will get situations where what students are upset about is something really actionable. And I've also been able to kind of not keep hiring somebody based upon the student complaints. I'd say that's rare, but it can happen.
We've already talked a little bit about some of the, I don't know if challenges is the right word, but maybe some of the difficult aspects of being a chair. What do you think some of the benefits of being a chair are? And also, like, in what ways have you noticed some professional growth or personal growth for being a chair?
Personally, I was pretty scared to be chair when I started it. I just thought, oh no, I'm not cut out for this. I don't know if I can do it. I just was really uncertain. And I think I've grown a ton in confidence. And then part of why I wanted to be chair was that I did have a lot of ideas about directions I wanted the department to go in. And so it's not like I get to choose exactly what we do, but I'm able to, kind of set the agenda for the meetings. And then the department faculty can decide, which way they want to go, but I'm at least kind of deciding what the conversation is going to be about that day. And so I found it pretty gratifying to try to make positive changes in the department.
Yeah, for me also, the most important benefit of becoming a department chair, being able to make an impact in a bigger scale than I was able to when I was a faculty. So as a faculty, you're still a leader. You can make changes. But as a department chair, the scale of that is multiplied. And, the opportunity to bring, new technology, new topic to the curriculum, building bridge between industry and academic, and making bigger impact is what excites me every day. And like Berit said, is you have a lot of opportunity to make those, to make your ideas to be realized in the real world and have significant impact on the future generation of students. So I think that really excites me, but at the same time, it comes with a lot of effort. None of it is easy and sometimes takes years to happen, but still I feel like you kind of like can leave a legacy at the end of your term as a chair that I renovated this lab, or I bring this opportunity to our students, and they might be there for years to come. So I think this is one of the most significant benefit for me, at least, to be able to make those positive changes for a larger group of students.
And for Berit, you've been chair, I guess, for 2 terms, right? If you've been there for 8 years. So I guess it was good enough to go for a second term?
Yeah. At the end of my first term, it was February 2020. And I told the department, well, now that semester conversion is over and we've changed the remedial math program and done all these really hard things, I think it's gotten a lot easier. So I'm willing to keep doing it because everything is kind of settled down. And that was February 2020. I agreed to do a second term. And then March 2020, everything blew up. And that was probably one of the most difficult times of my entire working career. But I want to backtrack and say one other benefit that I think that I've had is just getting to know people outside of my department. Mm-hmm. My department is so big that I feel like I could probably have spent my whole time as a faculty member here and only ever talk to other math faculty. And being chair has allowed me to meet department chairs from other departments and administrators and staff people in the Office of Student Success. And I've really enjoyed getting to know all of these new people on campus.
And I'm sure that you both have a much wider or more correct picture of how the whole university works. Absolutely. Compared to when you first, before being a chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. To this point, I'm still thinking like, who is the person that does this task? And once I didn't know, a lot of it I didn't know, but every day you know someone new that is able to assist you with something, which is great resource, because let's say you cannot log into a website and you know exactly who to reach out to assist you in a matter of a second. But before you become a department chair, you probably had to ask 10 people and figure out who would be the right person to reach out. So you definitely get a good network and you get to meet a lot of people that can be very helpful for your department, faculty, and students.
What you're saying is that faculty in your department should just ask you all the questions about what to do in the university.
Probably.
In order to become like a higher level administrator, like a dean or a provost, or often they'll start as department chair. Is that something either of you are possibly interested in? Maybe one day being a associate dean or a dean somewhere? Or is that something you have never even really contemplated?
I've contemplated it, but I'd say not right now. So I'm in my 8th year, which is the end of my second term, and I am stepping down at the end of this term, I am delighted to say. And part of why I'm so delighted to be done is that I love teaching math. Like, that is my absolute favorite thing in the world, is teaching math classes, and I haven't been able to do that for 8 years. And so I definitely want to focus on my teaching for at least the next year.
For me, I think it's too early to think about becoming a dean, but yes, I have thought about it, that what I still haven't found the right answer to it, that what is that I want to do after, let's say, 1 term or possibly 2 terms of being the chair, because I don't want to be a chair more than 2 terms, sorry. And the reason for it, I believe there should be change in leadership in any institution after a certain time, or things become very stagnant. I think after my 2 terms, either I have to decide that I want to go to the next level of administration, or I have to become a faculty and leave the door open for other faculty to experience leadership. So I still try to figure that out. And I think if the opportunity arises in a location that I like, because also comes with it, if you want to become a dean, often you have to go outside your comfort zone or outside the state that you like in a new location. And often dean's position are, for example, for not like a tenure track position that you stay in the same institution for so long. So you have to be willing to probably move 2 times at least for the rest of your career. So these are the questions that I'm not quite sure, but I continuously think about it. And what is my calling? Is it that I want to go to the next level, or it is to go back to a faculty position? Because I find joys in both of them. Like, I really enjoy what I'm doing now as a department chair, but also I like teaching and more importantly, doing research. So I feel like if I become a dean, I would not have a chance to, have intellectual freedom in the way that I have as a faculty member. And that comes with a cost for me, because I like that intellectual engagement with science and engineering things. So it's I think about it, and what I have come up with as an answer for now, that I put it in rest in my mind, is that when the opportunity arises, I think about it and make a decision then. It kind of like I cross that bridge when I get to it.
Yeah.
And I have been reached out by companies for dean's position. And I might, at some point when I feel like I'm ready, apply to go through the process to see what it is, even though some of them might be in locations or positions that I'm not interested in. But am I ready at the moment to make that transition and decision with certainty? I would say not yet.
Are you able to work on your research while being a department chair?
I have been doing summer fellowship with the Air Force on my research stuff. So luckily I have been able to publish and keep my research going on. It has been very challenging, but I have been doing that job at the same time, given that my chair position is, kind of half-time.
So one of the jobs of the department chair is, as you mentioned earlier, to be an advocate basically for the department to the rest of the university. And the kind of resources you might need are new faculty, tenure track faculty positions, maybe new equipment, maybe more space. So when you have meetings with deans or other people in the university, how do you advocate for those resources?
I just leverage other resources that I have. So for example, I come to the dean and I say, I have raised $250K in donation, and I want to use another $250K from the income we have from our master's program. Or I have commitment for this much money and I want you to make a commitment for this much money. And, sometimes using facts and evidences, like for faculty line, I have to write a 5-page report that why we do desperately need 2 faculty lines. And then at the beginning, I asked how many pages do you need for justification? And she said, our interim dean at the time said, write as much as you want. And then I sent her like a 5-pager, and she was like, oh, can you summarize it to 1 page? I was like, I ask you, because I can, write forever on why we need. But I tried to come in with facts, data, statistics, leveraging other resources we have, and really make the point that how this is going to impact the future of our program, our enrollment, and the university as a whole.
I agree. You need facts, because every department chair is saying, well, we need this, we need that, we need more resources. So if you just say, well, we need it, then you just sound like all the other chairs. So I look at student enrollments, I look at the faculty numbers over time. Oftentimes on this campus, they ask us to look at the number of majors in a program. And I always argue pretty strongly that for math, that doesn't make sense, because like 85% of our classes are to non-majors. Mm-hmm. They're to, people in other departments.
Service courses.
Service courses, yeah, exactly. I also try to be a team player. So I try to help out when needed. I try to work cooperatively with administration. Oftentimes faculty and administration are kind of on opposite sides, but I really try hard to be respectful of the administrators I know and try to work with them when I can, so that when I do ask for something, they're like, oh yeah, Berit, she's always willing to help out. Let's help her too.
I think I cannot put enough emphasis on being a team player. If you are willing to collaborate and work with other people, especially the dean, when it's the time that you need help, then they come around and they help you to the extent possible. But if you're not a team player, then things are very difficult for you.
So, I imagine you have to be a diplomat every single day to fellow faculty, to students, to deans, to everybody.
Absolutely, because also sometimes faculty come and they have complained about each other too. So that's also becomes very tricky because you cannot take sides. You'll have to, again, play a mediator role and also sometimes assist the dean to break bridges between some of the chairs also. You help him or her to work with two department chairs that are not working together. So you can play a major role in bringing people together in a way, and that helps you when you need resources as well.
I think every chair also gets to know their dean pretty well, of like, what does this particular dean find persuasive? Like this dean maybe would be persuaded by charts and numbers, but this other dean might be more persuaded by stories and narrative, so you kind of have to manage up by knowing what the people above you want to hear.
Exactly.
When you think of other department chairs who you see as being very good at their job, what are the kind of common characteristics that you see? We've discussed a lot just now about being diplomatic, paying attention to your dean and the particular characteristics with your dean. What other kind of characteristics come to mind when you think of someone who's very good at their job of chair?
I think being very even-tempered, kind of willing to just listen, hear people out, not jump to conclusions, fair and transparent. You do have some resources that you can spread around among your faculty, and if you appear to be doing it in a way that you have favorites or something like that, it's going to undermine your effectiveness. So you have to be really clear about how you're allocating resources and why things are the way they are. And then I think, just being able to sort of communicate your vision or communicate your ideas in a way that other people will get excited about too.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I find it very pleasant when a leader is calm and collected, and it's don't have a high temper and don't react. I myself sometimes get excited, and I feel like I've been working on that to be a little bit more patient and listen more and don't get overexcited. I think it's good for a leader to kind of be perceived as a very calm person, even though maybe inside there are things that are burning in their brain and they're exploding. But I think it's very good for people who are talking to a leader to see her as someone that they can talk to and don't necessarily receive advice all the time, and they feel being heard and their feelings are acknowledged. Another thing I learned actually from bad leadership type is that communication is the key. Like anything you do, especially if it's controversial, people should understand why. Because the resistance to change and conflict happens when people do not understand why you act or make certain decision the way you do. Like, for example, you might schedule a faculty and put them on a certain schedule, and they come up to you and say, can you make a change? And if you just say, no, it's not possible, it come across sometimes as personal, that this person is mean and take it on me, and he doesn't like to, he always makes, has favorite in the department. But my approach is, hey, you want me to change your class? I spent already enormous amount of time. This is the schedule. Tell me the alternative that doesn't change anybody's schedule. It doesn't create overlap among this 400, 300, 200, 100 level classes. And you can find a classroom for it. I'm open to solution, but I don't have the bandwidth to work just for one person. And if you have the time, I'll be happy to take that solution. So this faculty member goes and come back and says, I spent 10 hours and I find a solution. I was like, exactly, because it's not very easy. If sometimes we are resistant to change and we are not explaining why, it seems across as if like we don't want to make the effort. But the truth is, like, making small changes in a schedule, for example, in that case, might takes hours. Even it might be a simple 1 hour change, but it creates conflicts and it's a domino effect. So many things will be affected: the classroom, other faculties, the classes, courses. And so I think communication is the key, that you be able to explain why you make certain decision. And if you're not doing it the way that they want, it's because of this reason. Another example was a faculty was asking me to connect his lecture and lab, and I told him I can't because these 4 reasons. And if you have a solution for these, I'm willing to do that. And he was like, okay, never mind. Maybe we'll look back at this in 5 years. I was like, okay, that's a good idea. But, you know, in the past, we didn't have that much of communication about why things didn't happen, and started creating conflict and a culture of animosity between the department chair and the faculty. So I think it's critical because it puts you on ease and it gives you freedom of not always dealing with animosity of other people, and don't people target you as someone who doesn't like to make changes just because she thinks only her way is the way.
Yeah, the scheduling thing that you're meant. I do the scheduling, the preliminary schedule in my department as associate chair, and the first 75% of creating the schedule for a semester for me goes by kind of smoothly, but it's that last like 25% where you're trying to rearrange pieces to try not to have sections overlap, trying to accommodate people's requests for only trying to teach on certain days. And trying to find classroom space. It's
and imagine you have, like, we deal with 22 adjuncts. I bet you dealing with hundreds. I don't know how many.
About 80
adjuncts. So for those adjuncts, you have to go with their schedule or they cannot teach. So you have to contact them by individually and make sure that works. And some semester they cannot teach, and some semester they do. So it's a lot of pieces, and you have to accommodate. In our department, I have to accommodate about 35 faculties schedule, like together, adjunct and full-time, and we offer about 120 sections. And we have to put everything in 3-4 classrooms that we have available. And some of the faculty don't want to come in the morning, some don't want to come in the afternoon. So I told everyone, if I accommodate 70% of your request, this is going to be very good, because we have we have classroom, professor, and also course scheduling that should happen on a even way, that we're not offering courses that are critical for graduation at the same time, and we make maximum use of our classroom, and also give the best schedule that we can do to our faculty. So it's always in the center of our mind to do that. But those last minute requests that if I could do Mondays instead of Thursdays, I'm like, okay, give me a solution. I cannot deal with it, but I'm open to solutions from you.
In your role as department chair, you're not the boss, you're a leader, facilitator, but do you feel any kind of loneliness isn't the right word, but maybe separation from the rest of the faculty, because you're dealing with things that they don't ever have to deal with, and maybe they can't quite understand why certain decisions are made? I mean, of course, you could be as transparent as possible, but do you feel any kind of separation in your role as chair?
Yeah, I found it hard. I mean, I remember when I first became chair, I went to a training at the chancellor's office. And in the training, one of the people said, you can't be friends with the faculty in your department anymore. And I was sort of thinking, well, then I'm not going to have any friends, because most of my friends are my fellow faculty. And so I was talking to the dean at the time about that. And he said, no, you can. It's just that you'll only be able to be friends with some of them, and you're going to find out which ones those are. For some people, it is hard to go from you've been peers all along, maybe the two of you, used to complain about the previous chair, and now all of a sudden you're the man, you're the authority figure, and that can be really uncomfortable. it can also be tricky when you maybe know some information that is confidential. And so there might be a situation where you're having to make some decision or do something and you can't share why. And so this person that, is your friend feels upset or unhappy and you just can't tell them why. So you just kind of there has to just be a level of trust there, I guess.
Yeah, I experienced that to an extent. Nobody told me about it, but when I was recruited for 6 years after me, every year we recruited a faculty. So we were this cohort of younger faculty that were all friends. And I definitely noticed the dynamic changed a little bit after I became the department chair, and some became a little bit more distant. I think they saw me as an authority figure. I think they thought that they cannot trust me for certain personal stories and decisions or places that they go that they, So definitely the dynamic changed a little bit, but just like Berit said, you realize who are the friends that are going to stick around. So definitely there was a change, noticeable. And yeah, I heard a comment actually one day from one of my friends who attended an event, which was with one of our faculty, and I wasn't invited. And the other faculty mentioned, well, she's my boss now. And it triggered me really hard that, I wasn't invited because now I'm a boss and we were friends until yesterday. So it hit me hard that, wow, now I'm in a different category of friendship than I was before. So it definitely makes a difference, but you still have the friends that know you and want to be around.
Yeah, you kind of learn who's good at respecting boundaries.
Exactly.
I guess.
It's very difficult though, because for, keeping the professional and personal life separate, that yes, you're my friend, but also I cannot accommodate this request that you're asking me. And that's the challenging part that I sometimes have conversation with my husband about it, and he always tells me it's very tricky for you because your friends are your colleagues and you're the department chair. But I always have this challenge of how I need to, send this message across in a way that doesn't come across bad because we are a friend, but also I have to make this tough decision or tell you this the hard way. But I realized that so far, luckily, most of my friends / colleagues, we have been able to keep those boundaries clean. That, as a friend, I'm going to hang out with you on the weekend and we're going to, do biking or this and that. But as a department chair, I'm sorry, I cannot do this request because it takes so much time from me and this is not reasonable. So this is a very tough balance to maintain. It's one of the most challenging part of my job to keep that balance of friendship and being the department chair and not cross boundaries and make sure that I'm not making unfair decisions because of my friendship.
Yeah, and sometimes as chair, you're having to bring bad news to the faculty, like, we didn't get this resource we want, or there's this university policy that we have to comply with now, or something like that. And the faculty are angry. And I sometimes struggle with feeling like they're angry at me. They're not really angry at me. They're angry at the role. They're angry at the message. It's not me personally. And so I have to kind of work to remind myself of that, to not take it personally when people are venting or upset in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to being a department chair, what kind of training did you get, if any? And if someone wants to be a department chair one day, what would you recommend they do in preparation so that they would be a great candidate and maybe be able to hit the ground running when they become chair?
I think they should start early, taking on leadership position as a student all the way until they become a professional. Like in this case, a faculty, it's important. I personally received the Leadership Scholarship Award when I was a student. I started a Iranian Student Association in my university and organized people. And that was my first official experience as a leader. And then later on, when I became a faculty, I started to participate some of the leadership learning opportunity. There was a faculty leadership learning community that was organized by the university. I was nominated by my department chair at the time to participate, and I did that. And then there was another program called Edge on campus that was also nominated by my department chair. I have to mention that learning is important, but also you want to find mentors and sponsors. And the difference between mentor and sponsor is mentor is someone who you reach out to get advice on certain issue, talk to them on a regular basis, and usually you have an organic relationship that is built up because just setting up people as mentor and mentee might not necessarily work. Sometimes it works, but I found it that when it's organic, meaning that you meet someone in a context and start building relationship with them, works always better. And then the difference between mentor and sponsor is a sponsor is a person who finds something in you and provides you opportunity with your next job. It might not necessarily be a mentor that you go to every time you have a question or you need clarification about something. But it could be, for example, your dean that comes to you and says, hey, like there is this position open. I think you should apply. That's a sponsor, someone that sees some of your potential and feels like you might be a good fit for a certain position and becomes your sponsor. So having those is very important. I think in my department, former department chair kind of like tried to groom me as the next department chair by nominating me for some of these leadership trainings and stuff. So I like to believe that he saw something in me that he put my name forward. But I think it's important to show some of those characteristics, being committed, trying to listening to people, respectful, team player, have a good communication. Or if you don't have some of these skills, start working on them. What type of training allows you to become a better communicator? What type of training allows you to become a better team player? So you can invest on those and acquire those skills. You don't have to be born as a leader. A lot of these skills, I think you can acquire them if you don't have them. So training is a big part of it. At least it prepares you for a little bit of what you're going to have. But you learn a lot when you're at the job through doing the work, learn by doing. But it definitely gives you some tools to start with, like how to resolve conflict and things like that.
I think I did the same faculty leadership learning community just in an earlier year that was put together by the university. And I found that helpful, partly just to meet other people who were in positions of leadership and kind of hear, because I just never saw myself as any kind of leader. Like I'm a very introverted person and I don't like conflict at all. I'd rather just kind of like lay low and just kind of do my own thing by myself. And so getting to see a lot of different types of leaders and a lot of different types of personalities be leaders helped me to picture myself doing it. And then once I became department chair, it was mostly just learning on the job. But I try to think that everybody that I talk to has somebody that they could potentially teach me. And so I try to take advantage of all kinds of opportunities for training. So I've done training on the campus about conflict resolution. I've done training through my professional organization about specifically for chairs of math departments, because there are specific issues to math departments. I've actually done quite a lot of one-on-one coaching with somebody from EOTA on this campus, and I found that incredibly helpful. So when I have situations that I'm not quite sure how to handle, I know that I can shoot an email to this leadership coach and he'll give me good advice that I can figure out, if I want to use. So I try to just take all the training I can get. I feel like I need it, and why not? But then at the same time, there's always something coming up as department chair that you never would have dreamed of, that you can't prepare for. There's a lot of just kind of figuring stuff out on the fly.
Yeah, I agree about coaching. I also had the benefit of having 2 leadership coaches, especially the very first semester that I took over the leadership. I think having the leadership coach was immense for me. It was like someone that I can talk to and say, this is my situation. Am I doing something wrong? And get that validation. No, you did good things. And these are additional things you can do to try and see if things, work out better. It was great to have that coaching and training. Definitely gives you some relief at the beginning, especially when you take on this position.
Well, Berit and Shokoufeh, thank you so much for joining me today, having this conversation. I learned a lot And I'm sure anyone who's listening to this conversation will have a much, much better idea about what a department chair is and what their role is. So thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I'd like to once again thank Berit Givens and Shokoufeh Mirzaei for sharing their experiences of what it's like to be a department chair. If you made it to this point in the episode, you definitely should have a much better idea of why the chair is so important in the day-to-day functioning of a department. Before I go, I would like to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, there are a few ways to support it. You can subscribe to the podcast using your favorite podcast apps such as Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Spotify, and many others. You can rate the podcast and leave comments on whatever app you use to listen to the podcast. And finally, you can help spread the word about the podcast by telling your friends and family or anyone else that you think might be interested in this podcast. If you have any comments about this episode, feel free to email me at tesepodcast@gmail.com, and I will place the email address in the show notes. I will personally read each email and try my best to respond to them all. Take care, everyone, and goodbye for now.